Hello, this is @TeachSmith. Thank you very much for clicking on this video and I hope you find it helpful. So the top tip, think about the beginning of a text, the end of a text, and transformation. Bet. What transformation has a character gone through? How has a theme evolved? Think about how that could apply to your texts. Another top tip, think about this page in the exam, because remember you get all the titles and all of the authors of the poems. So think about how much you could annotate around this page in terms of the authors for the context and in terms of the titles, treating them like a quotation. The title is a quotation. So those who are particularly worried about remembering the poems, remembering quotations, this might be a useful exercise to annotate this page. Remember, English Literature Paper 2, you'll have a modern play, My Student Study and Inspector Calls, also the poetry anthology, My Student Study the Power and Conflict, and then the unseen poetry, parts A and B. So essentially, it's 2 hours and 15 minutes and 3 essays. An essay on the modern play, an essay comparing 2 poems, and an essay on the unseen poetry, and then a comparison paragraph as well. It is a tough paper. If it's Literature Paper 1 or Literature Paper 2, these are the kind of things you need to be talking about. I've already done a video on Literature Paper 1, which I'll link to above. Essentially, what is the author trying to make the audience or reader think, feel, or learn about a character or theme? And remember, context is about how ideas, events, politics, religion, culture, society have influenced the author. What is sort of swimming around in the author's brain when they were writing the text? If we're starting with the Inspector Calls, remember there's a choice of 2 questions. Please only answer 1. I've just paraphrased here, but essentially the character is Eric and the theme is social class. Mr. Bruff does rightly point out that it isn't always going to be in this format, however this is common. So if I was choosing between these 2 questions, I would choose social class because it's a really fascinating element to the play, and also there's just lots of different quotations you can use. This is a kind of plan that I've put together. My kind of central idea is that you're greater in age and the higher social class, the less remorse and responsibility you feel. Interestingly, Mr. Burling starts off as provincial, okay, which means that later he says, I'd give thousands. So he shows some remorse, Mr. Burling. Okay, it doesn't stick perhaps, but he does show some remorse. And we think that's because he was born into more humble beginnings. So he's perhaps suffered some of the hardship that he knows Eva Smith must have suffered. However, as a contrast to that, Mrs. Burling was born into a higher class, and she's a real snob. She says girls of that class, have no morals, no scruples, and she doesn't accept any responsibility for her part in the suicide. Gerald Croft is a member of the younger generation, so he should be someone who's been more transformed by things. However, because he's of higher class, son of Lord and Lady Croft, he feels less remorse than Sheila and Eric. And Sheila, even though she does transform, initially does use her social status to fire the shop worker. So remember, you have all the titles from all the poems and all the authors in the exam as a way to prompt your memory. Now, Ozymandias has come up twice indeed, so it's very unlikely to come up again. Just a few points, how I would go about this. So remember the focus. The focus is power, and I think about another poem I could compare to. So London, I could talk about tyranny. Ozymandias is a tyrant, someone who rules with power and fear, and then London is about tyranny, so how people suffer under cruel leaders at the church, a rigid church, a blackening church, the blood down palace walls. Prelude, power of nature, the imposing figure, the black peak. Other poems about power and man, okay, My Last Duchess would be a classic one. Sneer of cold command, I gave commands and all smiles stopped, from My Last Duchess. My Last Duchess refusing to stoop. Ozymandias were using this statue to almost try and permanently elevate yourself above everyone. Now the unseen, again, don't worry about every single line of the poem. Look at the question and the title. Okay, growing old, and the title is on aging. Think of either 3 quotations, so 3 lines, or 6 keywords. Again, you could say it's negative from that first simile, like a sack left on the shelf. Okay, forgotten, treated like an object, seen as obsolete, seen as not useful. It's about a personal response, it's about the message of the poem, the journey of the poem. How does she feel about a situation? How will she feel about a situation getting older? It's a very powerful message to say, don't treat me as if I'm finished. Don't treat me as if I'm nothing. Yes, it will be hard, but still treat me like a human being. Now, methods. When you do comparison paragraph to the second unseen poem, it's all about methods. So for example, I would compare the two similes. So Maya Angelou's saying she feels like a sack left on a shelf, and the woman learning to walk with a frame like a learning child. So that idea of feeling less powerful, feeling less competent, appearing less powerful and competent, appearing less useful in those two similes. So I hope this video has been useful. If it has, please consider liking and subscribing. Like I say, 50th video and 1 year since starting TeachSmith as a proper channel. Thank you very much for watching. I'll leave some more useful links in this final box. Thank you very much. Goodbye.